Thanks, Carol. We got Billy Joel here and Dave Herman from WNEW. Billy Joel is the guest DJ for the day. Billy, how you doing? How you holding up?
Oh, I'm doing great.
Yeah?
Holding up. We haven't even really ended it yet.
Right, no, we're only about halfway there. A little more than halfway.
A lot of energy for this early in the morning.
A lot of coffee, too.
Thinking about switching careers?
No. He's got this one locked up.
No, but I'm thinking about switching careers.
Dave, how's he doing as a DJ?
He's tremendous. You know, this is just a local boy, and we're just having some fun on the radio. No big deal. Right, Bill?
No, as long as you got some good music going, everything goes well.
Tell us why you're here. Why are you doing this?
Dave asked me.
What, for the July 4th weekend, right?
Yeah, well, we figured, you know, we broadcast down on Long Island now on 107.1 in addition to our New York City frequency. And long 4th of July holiday, and I know that Bill lives out here, so I dropped him a note and I said, let's have some fun for the Long Island folks. And he said, sure. That was really that easy.
We know, Billy, you got a lot of fans out in WNEW listener land, but also at News 12. Do you watch News 12?
Yeah, that's the Long Island station. Sure, I watched her.
What's going on with the Baymen? You've been raising money for them?
Well, we did a benefit for him last year, and they're going to be included in the benefit we're doing this year also. But they're just having a hard time. The Conics are, suffering from this brown tide. I guess everybody's heard about, and that's killing off the scallops. And with the legislation about the striped bass, they're not allowed to take fish, and they're just having a tough time making a living. And you're slowly but surely seeing commercial fishing disappear from Long Island, which I think helped define this place. And if these fishermen disappear, which is going to be, I don't know, just another suburb, and I want this place to have an identity, and I'd like people to know that we need an identity.
You're a champion for a lot of causes. I understand you're teaming up with Paul Simon in August.
Yeah, we're going to do a benefit for a number of local organizations out here on the East End. Yeah.
That's you got a big heart.
Oh, it's a really nice place, and I'm very grateful that I was able to be successful in having come from here. I'd like to give something back. So.
Are you going to be recording anything this summer?
If I write something, I will. But I just finished a long 16-month tour, so all I have to write about right now are hotels, airports, and backstage. It doesn't make for good music. So I've got to do a little bit of living first.
Now, forget about this summer. What about right now? A lot of folks out here want to know if you're going to perform.
I haven't thought about it, to tell you the truth. I thought it was a big thing just to get up this time of the day and do a radio show.
It actually was. But we're getting something together with Mick Jones is here, who produced Billy's album. Mick, of course, with Foreigner. And I think we'll have ourselves a little fun, too.
Billy picked all the music you're playing during the show. How's his taste in music, Dave?
Impeccable, of course. I mean, who has better taste than Billy Joel?
Although we heard Prince. What do you think about that?
I think that's fantastic. That's a great record and really defines early 1980s rock and roll, I think.
Oh, yeah. Prince was an innovator, and I think that particular record crossed a lot of boundaries.
Okay.
It was a good
We
record.
got to get on the radio now.
And we got to go. Thanks both, and good luck.
Okay.
Carol, let's go back to you.
There's going to be no more interviews.
Carol and Lee, here we are all over again at the Sunquam Elementary School here in Melville. Parents had been arriving all morning in preparation for their trip to argue their case in front of the Commissioner of Education, Thomas Sobel, in Albany. We will be on the bus heading out there with them. They'd been arguing all this time for the past few months, claiming that the school should not be closed because it is the only elementary school in the Half Hollow Hills district that is on the western half of the district. And also in light of the fact that a little girl died here a few months ago, parents say it is too traumatic for the children to be separated from their school and to have to be sent to other schools. But now comes a new argument, one involving racism against the school district. Some very dramatic charges. They're being brought by one of the parents, Ron Rosenberg, one of the parents of the children at the Sunquam Elementary School. He's also an attorney who is bringing this case to Albany. Mr. Rosenberg, what are these charges?
Well, the only thing I have to say is that the only thing new about it is the fact that the school district has recently released their ethnic census data, which revealed the ongoing racial discrimination practices that have been ongoing now for over 10 years in the school district.
Does the school district admit racial discrimination?
The school district admits their racial attendance policies. Of course, they label it racial balancing, which we believe to be another euphemistic name for the racial discrimination that they're practicing.
Even if their intentions were to racially balance the district, which you disagree with, but even if that was their intention, is that legal?
That's illegal in my estimation under the federal statutes, particularly under 20 U.S.C. 1701 and the statutes that follow that section, which mandate that Congress declares the policy of the United States to be that the neighborhood is the appropriate basis for assigning students to schools.
What proof do you have of all of this? Any evidence?
Yes, the ethnic census data information they revealed, and in a sworn affidavit, the associate superintendent admitted that elementary school children are assigned to schools based on race to achieve what he claims is racial balancing, even though that in this district with only a 12% district-wide minority enrollment, there can never be a school that will have more minorities in it than non-minorities.
And you think this argument will help keep Sunquam open?
Well, it's not an argument made to keep Sunquam open. It's an argument which explains the real reason why they closed Sunquam, because it wasn't for money. Money was the least savings with Sunquam. The closing of Sunquam is the most remote school, requires the greatest displacement of students. So every single valid criteria was violated in their closing Sunquam. So the search to find out what their real motivation was continued until we uncovered the fact that it was because Sunquam has the lowest minority enrollment that they wanted to distribute these white students to the two other schools, filling them up to capacity, thereby forever preventing the minority students who live in those schools' neighborhoods from ever attending those schools.
Okay, Ron Rosenberg, we're going to be following you up to Albany. We will be on that bus with the parents, and of course there are two sides to every story. We're going to have the other side from the Half Hollow Hill School District leaders. They will be in Albany as well, arguing their case. That is it from here in Melville. I'm Roma Torre. Let's go back to Lee and Carol in the studio.
Fleeing for safety.
Roosevelt Field had to be evacuated this afternoon after a blaze broke out there. News 12's Roma Torre is standing by at the mall now with the latest. Roma?
Right, Lee and Scott, it was a relatively small fire, with smoke being the biggest problem here. So far as we know, the mall is officially closed for the entire day. And despite it not being a serious fire, police and firefighters, and not to mention shop owners here, say it couldn't have come at a worse time. The fire broke out in the lower level of the mall. By 3 o'clock, police and fire departments began evacuating the entire building. No one was seriously injured, although 2 firefighters and a shopper had to be treated for smoke inhalation. It was the smoke more than the fire that caused the biggest problems.
The smoke was accumulating so quickly, I mean, we were just going to leave anyway, no matter what. No one came in to tell us.
But it happened so fast. It was in a matter of like 20 minutes.
Right.
I mean, we were downstairs eating lunch and we didn't even know it came upstairs, and the whole...
Any idea when the mall may open?
Tomorrow morning, they expect to open. They're right now allowing shopkeepers and managers to return to their stores just to seal off the area and close things down, but they're not allowing customers back in the store until tomorrow morning.
All right, Roma, thanks very much.
All right, Roma, thank you. On this Labor Day, other news, brisk...
Tori joined us now with that story, and Roma, Clinton had a surprise supporter with him.
A surprise supporter, but I'll get to that in a moment. Let me just add to the suspense. Bill Clinton needs a big win in New York's primary April 7th. After losing to Jerry Brown in the Connecticut primary this week, he has intensified his campaign, and it showed. He appeared tired and his voice hoarse. But interestingly, as the hour wore on, he grew stronger, and it seemed to be a factor that scored points with his audience. They expected Bill Clinton, but they got a bonus. Clinton's former rival and candidate, Iowa Senator Tom Harkin, announced he was pledging his support to Clinton's camp.
Again, what this campaign and what this election is about is who has the leadership ability to take this country, to work with Congress, make the changes that are necessary, and move this country in a new direction. And I'm here to tell you that Bill Clinton provides that kind of leadership.
But Clinton was clearly the man of the hour. His hastily planned visit to Temple Bethel in Long Beach was well attended. Press and senior citizens jammed the Jewish Center to catch a glimpse of the Arkansas governor as he makes his charge for the Democratic nomination. Along the way, he wasted no time in attacking opponent Jerry Brown's proposal of a 13% flat tax.
It's a double 13 tax. It's reactionary. Triples taxes on the poor, increases taxes on the middle class, and now, as Senator Moynihan said, abolishes the entire framework of Social Security.
And he couldn't resist launching a verbal missile against his opponent.
Some of my critics say that I'm slick because I don't stumble over my words. I won't sound too slick today because I can't talk. We could grease the wheels of the Long Island Railroad from now to Kingdom Come with the slickness it would take to shove this down the throats of the American people.
He also scored big points with the Jewish seniors by defending Israel, health care reforms, and Social Security.
I have offered for many months now a real departure from what President Bush has been doing for the last 3 years, to do the things that will make America a proud and great nation, to restore the forgotten middle class, to have long-term care for the elderly and the disabled.
It was music to many ears as one after another these seniors pledged their votes.
I shook his hand. I didn't want to say anything. I said, I've got to shake your hand. And I said to myself, he has a good, strong hand.
She's going to get a vote there. A tally for you so far. Clinton has won 14 primaries and caucuses to Brown's 4, and Clinton is still considered a heavy favorite to win the Democratic nomination.
I don't know if anybody offered him hot tea and honey, but he sure needed it.
Yeah, he needed it. I mean, the rigors of campaigning have certainly taken its toll on him. After this, he goes on to Manhattan and then Westchester, and he's going to have a long night tonight and a long next 2 weeks until the primary, April 7th.
Well, he's lucky that he wasn't somewhere else where he could be in some other trouble with his voice.
Yeah, no, truly. We also asked about a Clinton Harkin ticket, since Senator Harkin is suddenly pledging his support. And they kind of dodged that question. They said they weren't ready to announce a vice presidential candidate just yet.
All right, thank you, Roma. Busy time for both Bill Clinton
Very
and
busy.
Jerry Brown next couple of weeks before the April 7th primary. Well, the General Services Administration in Washington is okay to earlier proposals. Some educators are furious with this budget settlement. Here's more on the story now from our education editor, Roma Torre.
Right, Scott. Well, you can pretty much guess who's upset. It's those districts that received less aid this time around. And once again, it seems that many of the poorer districts ended up taking a hit. One of those is Wyandanch, a district described as no frills. And school leaders say even a 0.5% reduction could make the difference in that district between students graduating or dropping out.
Who wants to do 9?
The Wyandanch School District doesn't have a lot of money. Now it's getting even less. With the loss of $70,000 of its state aid, Superintendent Dr. Sterling Keyes says the district is in trouble.
And in effect, you can't run the place. So I don't know where we're going to distribute our pupils, but we ought to figure that out some kind of way, because I think it's absolutely and blatantly unfair to expect youngsters here to get an education when you do not have the funds in order to do it.
In the past 2 years, Wyandanch has lost $1.5 million. That's 11% of its total state aid. Educators say it has forced the elimination of dozens of essential programs and teachers. They're down to just one college-level course, and now that's in jeopardy because of the new cuts. There's not enough money for a track team in this district. Computers are a rarity, and this 8th grade math class can't even afford its own graph paper. They have to make do with Xeroxes.
You cannot explain to me how districts on this list, more affluent than Wyandanch, receive increases and we receive decreases. That explains that there is not a formula.
Some of the numbers do bear him out. Wyandanch and surrounding low-wealth districts lost state aid, while the wealthier districts gained. And in Nassau County, a more striking example. Mineola, Carl Place, and Herricks saw cuts, while the far wealthier Port Washington, North Shore, and East Williston districts saw substantial increases.
Yes, it makes me angry. And I think everyone should be angry. You know, even the people who are in the rich districts, if they were in our predicament, how would they feel about it?
Wyandanch students say they're frustrated too. For them, going to school is a costly lesson on a failing system.
It really hurts the school when we go down in the budget cuts, because less activities mean less students, because when the students don't join the activities, then they have no reasons for staying in school. That's how many of the students feel. And so education is really our backbone, our really strong focus, and we're cutting it. And so therefore we're not being the best that we can be, and will be.
And as it turns out, the cuts may go deeper than the $7 million on Long Island. The new budget dictates that school districts must now pick up $20 million of preschool handicapped expenses. Most of the state's preschool handicapped education takes place on Long Island. Melba?
All right. Thanks, Roma. Well, joining us now to talk about this.
Since his birth, 5-year-old Landon Bartell has spent more time in the hospital than his own home. But now he's saying goodbye to begin a journey of hope in a land of miracles, the St. Louis Children's Hospital, where doctors will perform a life-saving double lung transplant.
Without this transplant, Landon is unfortunately be forced to remain on the ventilator for the rest of his life. And this is Landon's way of becoming free.
The hospital has performed only 10 other such operations, most with success. But the risks, especially in Landon's case, are great.
It takes a lot of guts from the family to be able to take this risk to allow a 5-year-old to be a 5-year-old.
A transport team from St. Louis flew in on a Lear jet to take Landon and his mother to the hospital. Landon's father and brother and sister will move there later on in the month.
From what they told me, it's a 90% success rate. They have 4 little children already in the unit down there, and Schneider's children that have had successful transplants. And they're looking forward to seeing Landon down there.
But amid the tearful goodbyes are the anxieties of what's ahead. And this was a scene of heart-wrenching emotion. What are your thoughts right now?
I don't really have any. I'm a little on the numb side.
She made a decision that not every mother might make, and that's to give her child a better quality of life. And I have a lot of respect for her.
As for Landon, he among everyone here seemed the most confident, saying goodbye to his little brother.
Say bye, Landon.
This is a boy who knows he'll be back. It's expected that Landon will have to wait about 2 to 3 months in the St. Louis hospital before a suitable donor is found. But doctors say there's a very strong chance Landon will be home in time for the start of baseball season. And for the first time in his life, he'll probably be able to play himself. At LaGuardia, I'm Roma Torre, News 12, Long Island. They may not have had an ocean view before, but they've got it now. Mother Nature was especially devilish in Ocean Beach this Halloween. The Fire Island town is submerged under at least 3 feet of water. Have you ever seen this much water before out here?
Never. Not like this. Not even during Hurricane Bob this year.
Fire Island was evacuated, but some chose to stay.
That's how high the water was in the storm.
That's how high. What was meant to be a humorous decoration becomes hauntingly ironic. It's not likely anyone is going to be laughing. And while it was bad enough for people and homes, boats were battered and tossed, this one making several attempts to dock. Firefighters used to this sort of emergency situation said it was one of the worst they've seen.
It's never been this high. This is probably the worst it's ever been as far as height of water. And it's going to cause a lot of hidden damage to homes and businesses down here.
Over at Gilgo Beach in Babylon, it may not look as bad, but in some ways, experts say the long-term damage is much worse.
It probably looks very nice and serene to you, but we have lost over 20 feet of sand dune for a distance of 3 miles. This is one of the top 3 storms that I've seen due to the fact that it's unpredictable. It didn't live by any of the rules. When it was supposed to be high tide for an hour, it stayed high tide for 4 hours.
Before the storm, where I am standing, I would have been 5 feet under the sand. Those trees behind me were completely covered. But of course, all of the sand has been washed away in the storm. And while that might not appear terribly serious, experts say it leaves the area extremely vulnerable to disaster. Already the water tore through this stretch of dune, and many fear Ocean Parkway just behind the dunes is next to go.
We've developed Long Island South Shore with an awful lot of homes, and we don't exactly know what the effect would be if a new inlet were to open up here at Gilgo.
Is that possible, though?
Absolutely possible.
4 years of piling sand to form protective dunes has washed away in just 48 hours. The fury of the storm, combined with the power of the ocean, packed a Halloween punch that'll take years to heal. At Gilgo Beach, I'm Roma Torre, News 12, Long Island.
Everywhere I turn, it's Tracy, Tracy, Tracy.
You're under arrest.
This was 1990's answer to the mega hit Batman, and so was this. And while they did score major points at the box office, who could have guessed a ghost, his lover, and a comedian would end up with the year's biggest blockbuster? Ghost, to date, has earned well over $200 million. Ghost was plenty hot this summer, and so was its ad campaign. 1990 was so full of sexually explicit films, a new rating was created to avoid the curse of the X. And so a little art film called Henry and June gave birth to the NC-17. Videos echoed the new openness. Madonna justified her love with this one, but not to MTV executives who refused to air it. In music, nothing seemed to compare to Irish singer Sinead O'Connor, who took home many of the big music honors. And on stage, Broadway had one of its best years for musicals. Among the openings, OK, a revival of the Gershwin show featuring a Long Islander, Merrick native Greg Burge. But as stars were being made, some of our brightest passed away. This was a year that saw the loss of such film greats as Ava Gardner, Barbara Stanwyck.
Where did you learn that? In the encyclopedia?
And the Swedish beauty who just wanted to be alone, Greta Garbo.
Always be there for you.
The legendary Sammy Davis Jr. lost his battle to throat cancer. And in the same week, Jim Henson, the Wizard of Muppet fame, died of pneumonia. In October, the music world fell silent with the death of the legendary Leonard Bernstein. In the news, Roosevelt-born Eddie Murphy stole some headlines after being accused of stealing yet another script, this time Harlem Nights, which this Long Islander claims he actually wrote. And another native son, Billy Crystal of Long Beach, joined Robin Williams at Shea Stadium to promote Comic Relief 1990. Locally, the arts thrived, with two of Long Island's best theater companies staying alive, despite some legal and financial woes. The Gateway Playhouse and Long Island Stage both had healthy seasons. And at SUNY Stony Brook, the International Summer Theater Festival featured Roland Gift, the lead singer of the group Fine Young Cannibals, who ate up the stage for Romeo and Juliet. And in the local film scene, making movies on Long Island remains as popular as ever, with independent features leading the way. Such homegrown products as Walking the Dog and Small Kill are hoping to put Long Island on the map by making big killings in 1991.
Action!
And that's an entertainment wrap. I'm Roma Torre, News 12, Long Island. Not exactly chorus line, but there's certainly plenty of raw talent here. These children in Hempstead's Franklin Elementary School had a rare chance to get a lesson with Broadway jazz dancer and choreographer Frank Hatchett.
You got to give back. You know, I started like in the inner city, and my grandmom went out and scrubbed floors to get money for me, and this community supported me, so I like to give it back.
He started them off with a warm-up, and then they graduated to specific steps and routines. First, a demonstration by his assistants. And then it was the kids' turn, and that's when the magic began.
I think it was great of him to come today. I thank him for coming because he's a great dance teacher. And I didn't know a man could be that talented like that.
But Hatchett, who volunteered his services, taught these kids a lot of things that didn't just have to do with dance or movement.
Projection.
What's that mean?
That means to show pride in what you do and to show expression.
Do you believe that?
Yes.
We care about you because you are the future of our country.
And then it was time to put it all together.
You have to give them that incentive to try. And if they weren't perfect, but they were trying. And that's, you know, you're a winner when you try.
And at the end of the lesson, the kids gave something back. Presentations from both the girls and the boys. And it was clear they had learned plenty. Lessons for both the feet and the mind. In Hempstead, I'm Roma Torre, News 12, Long Island.
If we don't do something about it for them today, our tomorrow's going to be lost.
Nice way to end. Thank you, Ben.
We're ending. When I'm in Long Island, I watch News 12. Hi, Melba.
All right, don't forget July 5th, the Westbury Music Fair.
Westbury Music Fair.
All right, Melvin Scott topped this act. He believes the incidents were motivated by frustrations over the war in the Persian Gulf and the recent rise in attacks aimed at Arab Americans. News 12's Burl Britt has a report. Also in the Big Apple today, Mayor David Dinkins added his voice to those who want Governor Cuomo to run for president. Dinkins says Cuomo would make an excellent candidate, and he says the governor also has a good shot of winning. Cuomo says he will not be stampeded into making a decision on whether he'll throw his hat into the presidential ring. The governor says he wants to weigh all the factors before making a decision. Meanwhile, former U.S. Congresswoman and vice presidential candidate Geraldine Ferraro is leaving no doubt about her political intentions. She's getting ready to throw her hat back into the political ring, this time for U.S. Senator.
I think I finally found my place in the world.
Brian Dennehy considers himself a very lucky man. He's a film star, people are finally recognizing his name, and he gets paid to do the thing he loves most, acting.
I can't imagine if someone were to give me the blueprint improving on my life. I've got it exactly where I want it to be.
Ed Dennehy, who's about 7 years younger, feels pretty lucky too. Like his brother, he's a working actor, though not nearly as famous. But Ed's got another reason to be thankful. He's finally acting again after spending 18 months in a hospital battling tuberculosis.
I got out of the hospital in Denver in September. And this has been a fulfillment of a goal that I've had since that time.
He recently starred in a production of Educating Rita at Hofstra University, and big brother Brian flew in to lend support.
It's been a difficult situation for him the last few years, especially since he's been sick, but got a lot of talent, so we have high hopes.
They grew up in Mineola. The top picture is Brian as a young boy. Both attended Chaminade High School, where a special teacher first introduced them to theater.
He was a football coach as well, and I guess when coaching me in football, he said, you know, Brian, you really would make a terrific actor. So why don't you stick to it?
But despite having loving and supporting parents, starting out wasn't easy for the Dennehy brothers. In fact, their earliest days doing comedies together in local dinner theaters seemed more like tragedies at the time.
This is during the famous theater on Long Island, the Watermill Diner.
With an audience of
Neil Simon specials, folks.
I don't even remember. That was
You know, the guy wandering across the stage. Helen! Helen! Where's table 6? Do you know? Hey, pal, I'm in the second act. Excuse me. Could you get me a bourbon and water? Sorry, pal. I'm doing lines.
Sorry, I've got a line here.
Brian says his career progressed at what he calls a slow, snail-like rise. That is until movies like Silverado, FX, and Cocoon came along. Any sibling rivalry from...
No.
Well, are you crazy?
Right now, they say they're content with their lives. Brian's doing more films and a Broadway show down the road. And as for Ed, he says he's just thrilled to be back on a stage.
Well, my psychological health was to see that I could do it, and I'm so thrilled with the outcome that I have the energy, and and I'm on my way back.
I'm Roma Torre, News 12, Long Island. Bill Clinton needs a big win in New York's primary April 7th. After losing to Jerry Brown in the Connecticut primary this week, he has intensified his campaign, and it showed. He appeared tired and his voice hoarse. But interestingly, as the hour wore on, he grew stronger, and it seemed to be a factor that scored points with his audience. They expected Bill Clinton, but they got a bonus. Clinton's former rival and candidate, Iowa Senator Tom Harkin, announced he was pledging his support to Clinton's camp.
Again, what this campaign and what this election is about is who has the leadership ability to take this country, to work with Congress, make the changes that are necessary, and move this country in a new direction. And I'm here to tell you that Bill Clinton provides that kind of leadership.
But Clinton was clearly the man of the hour. His hastily planned visit to Temple Bethel in Long Beach was well attended. Press and senior citizens jammed the Jewish Center to catch a glimpse of the Arkansas governor as he makes his charge for the Democratic nomination. Along the way, he wasted no time in attacking opponent Jerry Brown's proposal of a 13% flat tax.
It's a double 13 tax. It's reactionary. Triples taxes on the poor, increases taxes on the middle class, and now, as Senator Moynihan said, abolishes the entire framework of Social Security.
And he couldn't resist launching a verbal missile against his opponent.
Some of my critics say that I'm slick because I don't stumble over my words. I won't sound too slick today because I can't talk. We could grease the wheels of the Long Island Railroad from now to kingdom come with the slickness it would take to shove this down the throats of the American people.
He also scored big points with the Jewish seniors by defending Israel, health care reforms, and Social Security. It was music to many ears as one after another these seniors pledged their votes.
I shook his hand. I didn't want to say anything. I said, I've got to shake your hand. And I said to myself, he has a good, strong hand.
She's going to get a vote there. A tally for you so far. Clinton has won 14 primaries and caucuses to Brown's 4, and Clinton is still considered a heavy favorite to win the Democratic nomination. This is the kingdom of Prince Charming, and this is the kingdom of Donald Trump. It contains castles and palaces and buildings that reach to the sky. It's a fortune worth an estimated $1.7 billion. Prince Charming shares his kingdom with Cinderella, but Trump's Cinderella, Ivana, is vacating the throne. Trump is ending their 15-year marriage, and according to one report, he complains his wife's head got too big. But maybe the problem's her feet. Perhaps the glass slippers just don't fit anymore. So now that Donald Trump is available, there have got to be thousands of Long Island women just dying to step into Ivana's shoes.
Oh my God, it doesn't fit. I wouldn't mind meeting him at all.
Do you see him as a Prince Charming?
No. I don't, but his money makes him more attractive.
So maybe the glass slipper might fit your foot.
7.5, Donald. Well, if he'd like to take us away or take us out for the day, that would be quite nice. Yeah, I think that would be allowed. I don't think our husbands would mind that.
Well, I've seen him frequently at the National Tennis Center at the Open, so at least I know where his skills lie. And mine lie pretty close to where his lie, so that might give us something in common right there.
Right, so you put your ball in his court, so to speak, right?
And vice versa. Why not?
Ivana's not exactly starving. In a prenuptial agreement, she'll get $25 million plus their 45-room Connecticut estate. It's a divorce lawyer's dream.
I don't think we're going to see War of the Roses, but I think that Ivana is going to go in asking for more than what she's going to get under the premarital, even though $20 million plus the $1 million house is a lot of money to everybody.
No chicken fee.
No chicken fee.
Do you think she's going to get it?
I think she is.
Donald Trump sure does get around. Already rumors have him linked to actresses and models. He's bound to discover marriage is no game, and while divorce won't exactly be a nightmare, it ain't no fairy tale either. I'm Roma Torre, News 12, Long Island. Miss Saigon, Broadway's $10 million musical, opened last night with a $35 million ticket advance amid protests and controversy. Is it any good? Well, here's my review. At times it is quite moving, but it's far from great, and the story of Miss Saigon is as old as war itself. Played on a solo saxophone. It is set just after the Vietnam War in the minutes and hours before the fall of Saigon into communist rule. It starts dramatically enough. A young Marine sergeant meets a Vietnamese prostitute on her first day on the job and his last day in Vietnam. She's in a desperate way, having lost her family to the war. It's a lovely scene and one that sets you up for what promises to be a great theatrical experience. They, of course, fall in love. The politics of war intervenes, and it ends in tragedy, made all the more tragic by its predictability and lack of imagination in the script's plot. The problem is that this basically sweet love story is so cluttered and burdened with gimmicks, the whole thing loses its intimacy, sort of like watching the Glass Menagerie at Radio City Music Hall backed up by a full-piece orchestra. An evacuation scene, for example, depicting the two lovers separated and desperately searching for each other, features a special effect helicopter landing and takeoff. Sensational to be sure, but extremely overpowering. The emotional effect is sadly upstaged. Still, there are many virtues to the production. Lea Salonga, the 20-year-old lead, is born for this role. She sings and performs with absolute virtuosity. Everything else about the technical production is flawless. Sound, lights, even set changes go off without a hitch. The music is lovely, though not exactly hummable, and Jonathan Pryce, the actor who was at the center of the casting controversy last year, does a star turn as a Eurasian born to be an American capitalist in a very un-American part of the world. He certainly lives up to expectations, although I can't believe the producer couldn't find an American actor to take his place.
The American dream.
Well, a lot has been said of Miss Saigon's ticket prices. Some seats cost as much as $100 each. Isn't it ironic, though, that a play so critical of American capitalism should be so capitalistic itself? And what you get for all that money is basically a very small love story draped in a lot of cheap thrills with a fancy price tag. For years, hospitals in our area have staged mock disasters, practicing so that they would be ready in such an event ever occurred. Well, last night the time to practice was over. It was the real thing. It was chilling. Crash victims brought in 2 and 3 at a time to at least 5 area hospitals. At Huntington Hospital, at least 4 children were lifted onto stretchers, all in shock. Adults in shock suits suffering from multiple trauma, fractures, head injuries, and several crying out in pain. At Nassau County Medical Center, a total of 18 people were brought in. 1 DOA, another died shortly after arrival.
Multiple injuries, chest injuries, broken bones, people in cardiac arrest.
Are any of them, some appear to be conscious as they were brought in, but I don't know.
I've seen 2 that appear to be conscious, yes.
Did they say anything?
One just said his name. That was all.
Among the victims here, the plane's navigator, brought in by helicopter, his body covered in bandages. Hospital officials say he suffered facial and body fractures as well as internal bleeding. He was taken immediately into surgery. And at North Shore Hospital, 12 adults and 6 children were brought in. 1 adult died on arrival. A New York City police helicopter brought in several more victims, all suffering from severe trauma. Relatives were waiting anxiously, among them a man identified as the pilot's brother, and this young man looking for his cousin who was coming from Bogota.
He was on the plane. He was supposed to come.
How old was he?
25.
Scene at Syosset Hospital was no different.
They're all listed critically at this point. There are multiple trauma and lacerations, and they're being evaluated inside at the moment.
Multiple trauma means?
Means many kinds of injuries, possible internal injuries, possible fractures, lacerations.
Are they talking or any conscious?
The children are very young, and a number of them are crying. Some of them are quiet. We have some Spanish-speaking personnel who are with them and comforting them, and they have calmed down quite a bit.
This was the disaster plan finally in action. All critical personnel had been brought in to do the job they had trained for, but rarely performed.
Critical personnel were called in. They arrived very quickly. Many volunteers from the neighborhood came in, people who speak Spanish, who want to help, people who are coming with blankets, people who are just interested in helping.
And help they did. At least 8 Long Island hospitals are caring for the survivors of Flight 52.
You were at Huntington Hospital overnight. What was it like?
Yeah, I got there just before they brought in the first ambulance with the victims, and you know, that war analogy is pretty accurate. At wartime, you know, when there is a disaster, people who are professionals, who know what their job is, do it without flinching. There was no chaos, no confusion. It was as if they had plenty of practice. It was a very smooth thing, considering the high emotions that must have been running at that time.
They do.
The big issue in this election is, of course, taxes, since we're in Suffolk County. We checked in with both of the candidates, Allmendinger and Pitts, and here's how it looked on Election Day in Babylon. The Republican challenger, Ann Allmendinger, hopes to rake in the votes as she spent part of the day doing yard work.
Taxes is the main issue, and if we can cut taxes by 23%, I think they should vote for the Republican line.
And you claim you can cut taxes 23%?
Absolutely, and can prove it.
My opponent hasn't stopped lying since this campaign started, so 23% is just another of a series of lies.
Incumbent Democrat Arthur Pitts is confident his 5% tax cut will win a lot of votes. However, taxpayers were split.
I voted for Ann Allmendinger for town supervisor.
Why?
I feel she serves people of town Babylon very well as a councilwoman. I feel she'll do a good job as a supervisor.
Who'd you vote for?
Arthur Pitts for supervisor. I think that he's done a good job for the town of Babylon, and I think that he's taken a responsible attitude, taking a responsible approach rather to governing the town, controlling spending, and managing our natural resources.
Well, this election in Babylon is going to be an interesting gauge to determine how much the voters blame the Democrats for high taxes in Suffolk County. We mentioned Pitts is cutting taxes 5%. He is very closely allied to another Democrat, Suffolk County Executive Patrick Halpin, who has raised taxes in Suffolk County by as much as 170%. So we'll find out if voters are looking at this from as a party issue or on an individual basis. That is it from Babylon Democratic headquarters in Babylon at Chateau Le Maire. I'm Roma Torre. Let's go back to the studio. Hundreds of strikers, all members of CWA, the Communication Workers of America, rallied in front of Nassau County's telephone headquarters in Garden City.
We wanted to bring all of our people out here today to give them an idea of what's going on with negotiations and to let them know where we stand. We still have a long way to go.
This is the first rally 9X workers in Nassau County have had since Monday, when it looked like a tentative agreement was being reached. But the 500 strikers out here have made it very clear to me that nothing is over or settled yet, and they are prepared to stay out as long as it takes.
We want to know about the medical, what we're settling for, why they're restructuring the wording, what's going on.
The major sticking point was the company's insistence that workers pay part of their medical benefits. But union officials tell me management has given up on that issue.
It's a shame it took 15 weeks to come up with a package, the same package that we had prior to the strike starting. If that package was always there, and now after 15 weeks it's there, shame on who?
But now it's the retirees, 14,000 on Long Island alone, who are worried. The company is still demanding they pay part of their benefits.
People that are working now and the people that are going to retire have to pay their own medical. This is the reward they get for being so loyal to this company. It's a shame.
Union officials say there are many other issues still unsettled at the local bargaining table, and they're doubtful those matters will be resolved anytime soon.
We could be out here for a while longer.
Another 15 weeks?
Oh, I hope not, but we'll be here until we get them resolved.
Could you all go another 15 weeks?
Yes, I think they could.
The workers say the strike has left lasting scars, and their frustration over the past 15 weeks has turned to bitterness.
We will never forget this, and management will know it. Everything we're going to be working 9 to 5, and that is it.
So when the strike is truly settled and everyone goes back to work, it's likely to take much longer before business returns to usual. In Garden City, I'm Roma Torre, News 12, Long Island.
We had a fire in that basement. The basement could either fully involve the school, blow the school up, and if there were any children in there, I think they would be in danger throughout the whole thing.
Inspector Paul Casella from the Fire Marshal's office says the Hempstead schools are Nassau County's worst in terms of fire prevention safety. More than 60 violations remain outstanding. When we arrived at the middle school for a surprise inspection, we found gasoline cans and flammable chemicals improperly stored. There was only one exit. Fire extinguishers expired for years, and a situation where exhaust fumes leak into the schoolrooms.
It goes up there and they can't breathe either.
They can't breathe because they're smelling the exhaust fumes.
Right, it goes straight up, and they complained about it. That's why they made the home economics, the teacher's lounge. Then they put the home economics on the other side of the building.
So what's directly above here?
You have classrooms.
So the kids are smelling it.
Right now, yeah.
This room contains pipes covered with friable asbestos, a serious health hazard, in a place where workers are constantly moving in and out.
Like I was told to take all the asbestos off the pipes, all the asbestos covering.
You did it yourself?
I did it myself, but at the time I didn't know I could refuse to do it. And they couldn't do anything, but I didn't know at the time.
Did you wear protective clothing?
Just the coveralls that I had, and I had a hat.
Maintenance workers say it's been like this for more than 20 years, and they're angry it's taken so long to correct.
We've been promised over the years, that we've had renovations taken care of down here. But nothing's ever happened.
But the problems don't end here. Inside the middle school, we tested the fire alarms.
Nothing's working. No, and say now I got. Oh, there it goes. Where?
The alarms sound in only one part of the building. In case of a fire, half the building would never hear a thing. If you had children in that middle school, what would you be doing right now?
I'd be very worried, and I'd take them out of that middle school and put them someplace else.
In Hempstead, I'm Roma Torre, News 12, Long Island. Has been one of the most anticipated films of the year, certainly for Long Island, with Ron Kovic, its subject being from Massapequa. And by Hollywood standards, this is a very hot release with Tom Cruise its star and Oliver Stone its director. It opened in 2 theaters here at the Comac Cinemas, and I understand they're expecting sellouts throughout the weekend. You've heard all the hype, but is it any good?
It's the first time that I've been to the movies and I cried.
From that reaction, I know it sounds like I'm on the movie company payroll, but believe me, I am not making a commercial. I couldn't find any criticism whatsoever about this film. Everyone seemed to love it. It is obviously that rarest of Hollywood movies. It's got quality and commercial too. And Melba and Scott, if you plan to see it anytime soon, be prepared to wait on some very big lines. That's it from Comac. I'm Roma Torre. Let's go back to the studio.
All right,
From the looks of it, this is an ordinary graduation. There are the graduates, the proud parents, and of course, the commencement speech.
We congratulate you and we say God bless you. Keep up your hard work.
But what you see going on here is actually something very special. This is the Little Village School in Garden City for developmentally disabled children. It's a place that can make dreams come true.
It's hard for me because we've been here for a long time, and the school's done a lot for him. I was never able to communicate with him. And now just seeing him that he's singing and talking and he's excited about going on to another school. And it's also sad to say goodbye to some special people here.
The lessons these children have learned may seem basic, but for many of them who could barely walk or talk when they arrived here, their graduation is something of a miracle.
Carried him in as a little baby with a lot of hope, and he's proved that miracles can really come true.
Very proud, very proud. Very sad also to leave the school. A lot of good people we're leaving behind, but I'll never forget what they did for my son.
Emotions ran deep in this room where parents and their children had to say their final goodbyes. Some children spent as much as 10 years here. For their families, the experience was worth a lifetime. What do you want to do when you grow up?
Be a teacher.
In Garden City, Roma Torre, News 12, Long Island. Right, Scott and Melba, we spoke with three branches of the military, the Army, the Navy, and the Marines, and surprise or no surprise, none of them could tell us if there were any significant changes in the numbers of enlistees since August, and whether or not Operation Desert Shield has anything to do with that, they had no answer. Delphi may not be far from St. Agnes, but here the story couldn't be more different. High school students are gathering for the second annual National Issues Forum, and this year's topics are abortion and freedom of speech. Carol and Lee, this may be one of the biggest days in the 30-year history of the Holy Family School in Hicksville. It is one of 4 on Long Island and one of 221 in the entire United States being cited for excellence by the U.S. Department of Education.
There's a lot of talk about some kind of ghost in the first flick. What's that all about?
Well, funny you should ask, Bill, because I have gotten so many phone calls about this so-called ghost, and I'm going to set it straight for everyone. In the 3 Men and a Baby film, there is a scene about 2/3 of the way through in which Ted Danson and his mother, played by Celeste Holm, are walking with the baby. But as they pass by a window, you may notice a figure behind the curtains. We have frozen it for you so you can see for yourself. Now, it appears to be a little boy, and a lot of people want to know, is this a ghost? Otherwise, what's it doing there? Well, according to Touchstone Publicity, the scene was not shot in a haunted Manhattan apartment, as some people insist. It was shot on a soundstage in Toronto, and the so-called ghost is a cardboard cutout of Ted Danson, which a prop person mistakenly left in the window. Now, it sounds hard to believe, but then later on in the film, the cutout is actually used, and there it is, this time up close and more personal. Now, we have compared both scenes so you can make your own decision. But ghost or no ghost, the story has certainly paid off for the movie company. Video stores are reporting the 3 Men and a Baby video is selling and renting like hotcakes. People are no doubt looking for that so-called ghost. Now, is it a publicity stunt? The movie company says no, but consider that just seconds before the first scene, that figure in the window is missing. So how did it suddenly get there so quickly? Touchstone couldn't explain, and if they are wondering about it, you can be sure they're doing it all the way to the bank. Once again, the foster care system comes under scrutiny for laws that seem cruel and heartless. 5-year-old Alicia had been living with her foster family in Sayville for the last 3 years. Today, she was taken away, and her foster parents have no choice but to say goodbye, wish her well, and hope they'll be allowed to see her again.
I found a little tiny foot.
For 5-year-old Alicia, this is her family. She's lived in the Sayville home since the age of 2 when she was brought here in bandages, the victim of alleged abuse. She's come to know Victoria and Ron Miller as her mother and father, and their children as her brothers and sisters. But just as quickly as when she arrived, she's gone. The child is being returned to her biological mother in Brooklyn.
I just hope that her mother will love her and she'll think twice this time about being with the man that abused her child.
The Millers see themselves as another casualty of the foster care system. They intended to adopt Alicia, but under the law, only on the condition the biological mother agreed to terminate her rights to the child. That never happened, and after 2 years, she decided to take the child back.
She once said to me, "Mommy, why are you sending me away?" And I said, "I'm not sending you away. I love you very much, and we all love you." But it's just something she had to do. She had to go home to her natural mother, and I just hope, like I said, we can see her again.
Victoria Miller says she can't argue with the law, but she fears for Alicia's safety. The child was allegedly abused by her mother's boyfriend. They've since married, but he's reportedly moved to Poland. Miller says there's no proof he's left the country, and she's worried the couple will eventually reunite. Victoria and Ron Miller spent the last 3 years learning the joys of raising a child in the foster care program. Now they're feeling the heartache of losing that child to the same system. It's been an experience so painful, they say, they never want to live through it again.
I can't say who she's better off with. I only hope that who she is with and who she ends up with will love her to the fullest.
I spoke with the director of the foster care agency called St. Christopher Attili, and as far as Victoria Miller's concerns for Alicia's safety, he said he had sufficient proof through the services of a private investigator that the mother's husband was in fact living in Poland. And he told me if they have any suspicions at all that Alicia's mother plans to leave the country, they might be justified in pulling her passport. He told me Alicia will be monitored weekly and there will be surprise visits by social workers.
Are you employed now? Your age?
There is activity in this Navy recruiting office, but not any more than last year. Navy officials say, if anything, recruitment has dropped slightly, but they attribute that to increased standards.
One of our goals wasn't made. People immediately, of course, will say, well, that must be because of Operation Desert Shield. No one wants to go, but there's no reason to believe that. We've had as many people come in the office and say, I want to go, as we have walk into the offices and say, I don't want to go, or stay away from the offices, or perhaps people who have been talking to a recruiter and have changed their mind.
And over at the Marines, they're still the few, the proud, but no more, no less these days, despite Operation Desert Shield.
We haven't noticed a change in recruiting. Our mission has remained pretty much the same. But what we have noticed is that there's been an increase of former Marines who are interested in coming back into the Marine Corps.
This young man, an 18-year-old, signed up today, but he said he would have done it no matter what was happening overseas. You signed up today?
Yes, I did.
Why?
Well, it's in my family, and I'd like to defend my country if there's a war.
Does this have anything to do with Operation Desert Shield?
A little, yeah, but my older brother is a captain in the Marine Corps now, and my father was in the Marine Corps, so I'd like to carry out the tradition of my family.
Marine recruiters say they don't see this as a mission to supply troops for Operation Desert Shield. For them and other branches of the armed services, it is still business as usual. In Garden City, I'm Roma Torre, News 12, Long Island. The Huntington school bus involved in a collision didn't have seat belts, but one student said it wouldn't have made any difference. She, like many Long Island students, choose not to buckle up.
One of the first questions they asked us when we got in the ambulance was, were you wearing a seatbelt? And I was like, no.
New York State has a law requiring that all school buses built after July of 1987 be equipped with seatbelts. But there is no law that says the seatbelts must be used. So here on Long Island, while many school buses have seatbelts, well under 10% of the districts require the students to actually buckle up. The fact is, it is the individual school district's decision in New York to institute a policy of seatbelt use. Most on Long Island choose not to mandate seatbelts. And according to this man, a former president of the State Association for Pupil Transportation, that's good news.
We as an organization would prefer not to have that mandate in effect because we feel, on top of the liability factor, that the seatbelt, type of seatbelt that there is today, the lap belt, is dangerous to the child.
In South Huntington, seatbelt use is urged but not mandated. Officials say students choose to use the seatbelts more often as weapons than instruments of safety.
For many of the youngsters, without having a monitor or someone on the bus that can actually supervise and see that they're using them, will tend to use the belts as weapons. And that can defeat the whole purpose of them.
According to many Long Island transportation experts, school buses are safe enough without the seatbelts.
Common thinking is that if seatbelts are safe in automobiles, why not put them in school buses? There are a lot of different reasons why they shouldn't be used in school buses because of the construction, the manufactured compartmentalization in a school bus that provides a safe environment for a child to ride on a school bus.
So on Long Island, for many educators, the message to students seems clear. Buckle down on your studies, but you may not have to buckle up on the bus. I'm Roma Torre, News 12, Long Island. Whoa, come on, get over.
It's accident one.
This is not how you play Nintendo. Now watch a real champ.
I do my homework first before my Nintendo.
Yeah, sure. Dad's here. Is that why you're saying that? No, that's true?
Yeah. It's sort of true.
14-year-old Eric Trinagel from Huntington is a whiz at the game. He's a state champ.
Nintendo gives me most of my brain power. Yeah, that's it, yeah.
He's one of 90 people competing for the World Nintendo Championship in Los Angeles. That's 90 people out of more than 500,000 who started the competition. 3 people will win in 3 age groups. Eric in the teenage category is probably going to have the stiffest competition.
My best would be Tetris. I haven't met a friend yet who can beat me in it. People watch that just like tell me to turn it off because they get sick. But that's how fast it is.
I have a computer game that has surgery in it, and he spent all weekend doing surgery, and he's now learned to remove an appendix, so God knows.
Eric's family, which doubles as a fan club, says they can't even come close to his level.
There's no challenge to it for him. It's just 1, 2, 3.
Really?
He's a machine.
They say they have complete confidence he'll do well in California. As for me, how did I do the first time around?
Not bad.
I guess I'll keep my day job. In Huntington, I'm Roma Torre, News 12, Long Island. Long Island's children are going back to school, and while they're guaranteed a so-called free education, consider this. Their teachers are earning an average of $44,000 a year. Their superintendents are getting record salaries of as high as $133,000. And their districts are now forced to shell out millions for expenses the children will never see: insurance, asbestos removal, and maintenance. Who pays for all of this? We do, most of it.
The taxpayers' pocketbook has reached the bottom. And they've been trying to get this message out for a long time. Generally, that the wells have run dry.
Running a school is big business, and it is clear the business of getting an education ain't what it used to be.
We're not looking at an environment that existed when senior citizens like myself went to schools 50, 60 years ago. We're dealing with different problems, different technologies, different needs, and different costs.
Schools must fund special education and social programs such as drug abuse and teenage pregnancy, much of which is required by law, and yet little is paid by the lawmakers. In fact, less and less of Long Island's educational costs is satisfied by state aid. In most districts throughout the state, aid pays 40 to 50% of a school's budget. But because Long Island appears wealthier than the rest of the state, all of our districts suffer, getting only 15 to 33% in aid money. And you can be sure Long Island's taxpayers are fighting back, often the only way they can, by rejecting their school budgets.
Tax PAC is not anti-education. I think we are probably stronger educational advocates for children as a whole.
Last year, tax PAC groups with a membership of 18,000 claimed responsibility for helping to defeat a record 40% of all school budgets. This year, they're seeking school board seats. Their new strategy is to work from the inside, and one of their first targets is the administration.
You have elementary school coordinator, secondary school coordinator. Everybody seems to have something to do, and yet one has to stop and wonder, are they really that busy?
Many were certainly busy this spring, hacking away at their budgets, and most districts were able to hold the line on tax increases to an average of 4%. But by summer's end, 11 districts wound up on austerity, and their budgets, already stripped bare, were cut even more.
Youngsters who would typically ride to school will now be walking,
and where we were serving breakfast and lunch, we will be prohibited from doing that.
One of the districts on austerity is Wyandanch. Like so many others on Long Island, it's considered low wealth, high tax. There's no industry here, and that means taxpayers end up carrying the heaviest burden of supporting the schools. It's a continually frustrating position because it always seems those districts that can least afford to help themselves are the ones that get stuck with the biggest bills.
I think the willingness of people here to pay is unquestioned, but their ability to support the system on only property taxes is just not there.
While educators and taxpayers may differ on many issues, they seem to agree that the system of funding our schools has got to change.
I think that the system itself needs to be examined on the basis of the individual needs of a particular community.
But until such changes occur, taxpayers and school administrators remain at odds, fighting over money that's in ever-shrinking supply. And in the middle of it all, the kids.
It's going to mean that the citizens at large are going to have to recognize that school must keep day in and day out. The needs of those students don't stop because of the economy. And if we don't help those students now, you may wind up having to help them later in ways that you won't like.
And that's a costly lesson. There's no such thing as just the 3 R's anymore. In fact, ask a young person what they are and you're likely to get a puzzled look. Students are still learning the basic skills of reading, writing, and arithmetic, but that's just a small part of what goes on in schools these days.
We are picking up more and more responsibilities that our society has decided we should do. Things such as children with drug and alcohol problems, children from one-parent families that require daycare, children who are pregnant. These kind of problems are besetting our school districts like never before.
This is far from today's typical family scene. More and more children today are coming from broken homes, single-parent families, and many don't speak English. So schools are having to cope. Let's face it, some of these kids spend more time with their teachers than their parents.
Years ago, when I first came into teaching, 15 years ago, I focused more on curriculum. I was able to pay more attention to the subject matter because the children were receptive to learning. Now, I have to deal with their own needs emotionally before I can hope to reach them on an intellectual level.
These teachers from all over Long Island are attending an education conference. But far from the usual academic subjects, the focus here is social issues. How to talk to kids about such things as AIDS, child abuse, teenage pregnancy.
The youngster cannot learn if he's so bogged down with a lot of emotional problems, so that the teacher can make the atmosphere an understanding and a comfortable atmosphere, the child will learn better.
Earlier this summer, a group of young high school women graduated from a Nassau program aimed at putting teenage moms back in school.
We have really radically reduced the dropout rate.
We would have never made it if it wasn't for them. You know, I'm glad that they have this program out for us teenagers.
All of this effort comes with a price tag, and though no one knows exactly how much, some say it's a steep one. State and federal governments have imposed strict mandates on school curricula. It is now a law that all New York schools must include courses on drug and alcohol abuse as well as AIDS. But the complaint is the state isn't putting its money where its mandates are.
Every time the state dumps more and more social programs into the schools, only the property owner is picking up the tab for it, but it's a societal problem.
And there's another complaint. Many educators are worried that schools have gone too far, teaching social issues at the expense of an academic education.
Children are not as much into education as they used to be.
The schools, like it or not, are finding less time each day and less dollars each day for the basics that they're there for. That is, reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Few can say academics don't suffer, and yet given the problems of our society, schools have little choice but to continue teaching well beyond the 3 R's.
I don't think that the academic needs of the children can be met if their social and emotional needs are not met first. A mind cannot be taught if a heart is not satisfied.
There is little doubt that the new social studies is here to stay, and there's no question it'll be costly. Another costly lesson? Perhaps. But one educator say we can't afford to fail. Ask almost any Long Island educator how we're doing, and you're likely to hear something like this.
We have the higher scores than the state average in PEP tests. We do better on SAT scores than anywhere else, and we're sending more students to college than any other region.
Sure enough, a review of Regents exam scores from 1989 reveals Long Island students on the average consistently outperform others throughout the state, about 5% better on all subjects, from biology to English to math. And yet critics want more. They point to the high cost of education on Long Island and complain our schools are not making the grade.
When high school teachers complain about the fact that children come from the elementary levels to the secondary level and don't know how to write a composition or structure a sentence, what did they learn along the line? Somewhere along the line, the educational system is failing.
Teachers themselves raise similar concerns.
I think you are seeing declining scores, and I think one of our basic problems is that students today cannot think logically.
So while Long Island students do compare favorably to others in the state, that may not be saying too much. The state as a whole isn't getting very high marks. In a nationwide report card prepared by the American Parents and Children Association, New York received a grade of C for educational performance, ranking it behind all of its neighboring states. And when it comes to SATs, New York showed a sharp drop in reading and verbal scores. Of a possible 800, New York students scored an average of 412 this year. That's down 48 points since 1972. Test sponsors called the results disturbing, but not surprising. They pointed to another statistic as part of the cause for the decline. Students, they say, spend 12 to 13 minutes per day reading, while TV watching takes up about 130 minutes of a child's average day. Nationally, the picture is no better. SAT reading scores throughout the country are the lowest in 10 years. And now another test prepared by the U.S. Department of Education called the U.S. History Report Card shows weak results, concluding American students have a limited grasp of U.S. history. Consider two multiple-choice questions given to fourth graders. Columbus sailed west across the ocean, too. Only 1/3 could answer correctly to find a new route to Asia. And the two major national political parties are, just half were able to answer, Republican and Democrat. So how does Long Island compare? We decided to try our own unscientific survey asking these same questions. And the results? Of the 9 children chosen at random in grades 4 through 8, just 2 could answer both questions correctly.
I'm in grade 5.
Christine, the two major national political parties in the United States today are
the Republic Independence parties.
And Columbus sailed west across the ocean to
try out a new ship. I'm going into 7th grade.
Chrissy, the two major national political parties in the United States today are
liberal or conservative parties.
Democratic and Republicans parties.
And Columbus sailed west across the ocean to
start a new revolution colony.
Find a new route to Asia.
But tests aren't the only measure of an effective education. This man, a former educator, says Long Island schools are failing to prepare our students for the job market.
All of the industries in our country are restructuring to meet the competition. Unfortunately, the schools have not been able to restructure sufficiently to get students to the point where they are able to have the skills and personal attributes necessary to fill the needs of the industries and businesses on the island for that competition.
When a student doesn't do well in school, he's considered at risk. Some critics say we have an entire educational system at risk. Long Island schools are indeed better than most, but when most everyone else is barely passing, is that good enough? You could call them Rhodes Scholars. They're graduates of the Rhodes Elementary School in Hempstead, and at the ages of 12 and 13, they're already guaranteed admission to college. Their story began 3 years ago when these 8th graders were graduating from 5th grade. Speaking at their ceremony was Dr. Eudora Pettigrew, president of SUNY at Old Westbury.
I was standing there talking to a group of 75 5th grade students who were graduating, and they were every ethnic group. They conducted their own service. They were so impressive that I felt somebody had to say something to them to encourage them to go on.
What she did was offer them guaranteed admission to her college if they completed their secondary education.
I was happy. I couldn't wait. I said, I'll never get left back.
When the children were in 6th grade 2 years ago, Pettigrew invited them to join in the college's anniversary celebration. That was their first exposure to higher education, and they've been coming back for more ever since. But before they can start here, they've got to get through here, and that's a challenge. The Hempstead district is riddled with problems: drugs, a severe dropout rate, and little money, a reflection of its community in a town struggling with poverty and abuse.
They have many more obstacles today than they had when I was growing up. Families, quite often there's a larger proportion of families that are not together.
She's in the business of providing a future as much as an education. And Pettigrew, who says she's surprised by the praise for her vision, simply wonders why others are so blind to solutions.
This is something that colleges should have been doing a long time ago. I'm not sure we're going to any lengths that what we shouldn't have been doing years ago.
And so one school did step in, not only guaranteeing a college education for the future, but providing classes and opportunities now to make sure the kids fulfill their end of the bargain.
How can we as a public institution work with a school district to assist children who perhaps might normally not get the chance, to assist them to realize their dreams?
What do you want to do when you grow up?
Be a singer.
Do you want to be a singer?
Yeah.
Do you sing now?
Yeah.
I believe the children of our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way.
I do want to be like Dr. Pettigrew, so I can meet a lot of people.
Good.
You want to be president of a college someday?
Mm-hmm.
Why not?
Show them all the beauty they possess inside.
I like what you wrote today.
Give them a chance of pride to make it easier. Let the children laughter.
Be a football player, a good wide receiver, that's what I want to be.
To be an anchor woman.
Do you really?
Yes.
Reminds us how we used to be.
Eventually I'll have to quit and go do something else. You see, leave space for young people like you coming along.
Can you wait till we graduate?
I'm going to try.
Everybody's searching for one hero. People need someone to look up to.